Of course they invaded Ukraine. There's no possibility that they weren't going to invade Ukraine. There is absolutely no way. Russia, one more time, has the same GDP as fucking Mexico. Russia would be absolutely decimated if they didn't control this problem.
What you're saying is because I was a little surprised too in the red pill space. A lot of people supporting Putin because we're giving money to Ukraine.
Jesus.
There's valid criticisms about us funding Ukraine.
Yeah, of course.
Or against funding Ukraine.
I'm totally fine with those criticisms.
But there's no
this pro-Putin shit is nonsense.
Yeah, it's complete stupidity, and I'm not really sure. Why do you think that is? Do you think there's a strand of anti-Americanism that's just considered hip and popular now that would just follow by default?
I think it's Twitter bots that's pushing Americans into it.
Well, we have actual personalities in the red pill who are saying so. They're just not bots at this point.
That is true.
So who are these people? Why do they believe this?
Putin kind of reminds them of Andrew Tate. That's it. That's what I've actually heard from some
masculine,
of these people.
Yeah.
And Andrew Tate has spoken in favor of Vladimir Putin, and I think that's where a lot of this is coming from. If I ever get a chance to interview Andrew, this is something we're going to talk about. Like, I just don't guys. You're sitting there listening to Russia state that the Ukraine has been taken over by neo-Nazis. By
their Jewish president?
How in
running this
God's name do you fucking believe that? It's so good because you know what. You know what? Who's been such a great defender of the Jews is the Russians. Man, they've been what an incredible defender of the Jews. Come on, man. You can't be that fucking stupid to believe this shit. He's
Isn't Zelensky himself Jewish?
I don't know if he is, but my point is like the point is like
the idea that he's supported by Nazis is ridiculous.
It's absurd. Like it's so
Totally
crazy
nonsense.
that people think that are there neo-Nazis in Ukraine? Not as many in the United States. We got a fucking ton. You want to check my Twitter? Check out my Twitter mentions. They hit me up every day. No, dude, like it's just such nonsense. What happened? For those of you who don't know, this is the truth. If you guys want to believe anything else, this is the actual truth. You can criticize this all you want, but you are not going to be able to use evidence to criticize this. What happened was Russia, after the Soviet Union fell, had the opportunity to pivot out of petroleum, but they chose not to. They chose to go heavier into petroleum. The oligarchs who put Putin in power, many of them are petroleum billionaires. These people altogether are more powerful than Putin, but Putin's more powerful than any individual one of them. They're the ones who inflate his raft. Do you understand? They're the ones who lift him up to maintain his presidency. Got it? What happens is he is now beholden not to any one of them, but to all of them together. He's beholden to them. So he must keep gas prices at a certain level, and he must be able to sell petroleum in order to keep that wealth there. About 25% of the GDP of Russia is petroleum. Look it up if you don't believe me. Okay? It's a ridiculously high number. Now, what happens is over time, Ukraine, he's got pipelines that go through Ukraine, and he has a very pro-Russian government in Ukraine. So he's shipping oil through Ukraine. His biggest single buyer of petroleum is Germany. So you have to go through Ukraine to get to Germany so people are buying there. The Ukrainian government, they start to become a little anti-Russian. They raise the tariffs. Hey, you want to pump your oil through here? We're going to charge you a little bit more. And then the worst thing in the fucking world happened to Russia. The Ukraine figured out that they have the 20th largest oil supply in their own country that no one is accessing. They don't have the technology to access all this shale oil that's there. So Ukraine realizes, number one, we're not going to be pro-Russia anymore. We're going to say, hey, NATO, do you want to date us? Can we join you guys? And number two, hey, Texaco, Shell, do you guys, some of you Western oil companies, do you guys want to come over here and extract some of this oil? Mm-hmm. So two things will happen. We're going to shut down the pipelines of Russia selling their oil to Germany, and we're going to sell Germany our own oil. Yep. Of course they invaded Ukraine. Yep. There's no possibility that they weren't going to invade Ukraine. There is absolutely no way. Russia, one more time, has the same GDP as fucking Mexico. Russia would be absolutely decimated if they didn't control this problem.
What you're saying is correct. Obviously Russia needs to sell oil to Germany.
Yeah, I've seen exactly what you're just talking about already.
So, luckily for us in the United States that the Nord Stream pipeline just blew up on its own, so, that really cut that off for us.
Yeah.
You think look, there's a UFO. Yeah. Hey, let's talk about UFOs now.
So it's funny. Let's
talk about UFOs.
You're talking about the pipeline that runs through over Finland?
Pipeline? Yeah, it just blew up on its own.
Okay, so the theory is that we use stealth bombers in order to blow them up.
There's a UFO. Let's talk about balloons now. Let's change the subject.
Let's stay on this. So here's one of the things that I love about this statement. So I don't know if the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, but here's what I do know. Here's the thing. The fact that Russia wants you to believe that, what does that tell you? Does that tell you they can shoot down stealth aircraft or that they can't shoot down stealth aircraft? Yeah. They're admitting to you they can't. You understand? They're basically Patrick Beverley guarding LeBron James, like calling a foul and flopping every time. Russia has gotten to the point where they're calling a foul. Forget about the fact that they invaded a sovereign country. Fuck that. We're just totally fine with the fact that they did that. No. Do I know that the United States did? I wouldn't put it past them. I wouldn't put it past them. But the point I'm trying to make is,
I think it was just a natural disaster. Things just happen.
Listen,
it's sucks for Russia
because I know Andrew believes that that's what happened.
It just blew up on its own.
No, he believes that the U.S. bombed it. Yeah, it's fine. And by the way, I can't speak to whether or not they would. I know
I think we all know what really happened.
I think the U.S. definitely could. I think the U.S. definitely could do it. But the point I'm trying to make is the United States is under no obligation to do fucking anything for Russia. Just remember that. Guys, no matter how dirty or nasty this gets, if all of a sudden there's a bullet that goes through... Oh, I shouldn't even say this because we're on YouTube. If all of a sudden Vladimir Putin...
I want to run for office one day, man.
If all of a sudden Vladimir Putin dies from COVID, whatever. If all of a sudden that happens, the United States is under no obligation to protect him. Remember that.
Maybe we'll give him a COVID vaccine.
If you're trying to get me to say U.S. foreign policy is bad because the United States make things harder for Russia, I'm going to have a real fucking hard time doing that. I'm going to have a real hard time.
Hey, I'm glad the pipeline blew up on its own.
Yeah.
Okay, we didn't do it though.
You understand? But here's the thing. Now let's extrapolate this. Let's look at this from a military battlefield. Now all of a sudden we've got this Russian front. The Russians have been digging in all winter, and eventually they're going to make their push forward. The Ukrainians, obviously, they don't have the numbers, but they do have the technology. The United States and NATO have been shipping them tons of extremely high tech gear to come there. The Russians, now they do have. I can't remember. It's called the T-11. I can't remember what their main battle tank is, but they do.
T-14.
But they still T-14. Yeah. But the Ukrainians are running like T-72s or T-74. I forgot what
we started training them on the Abrams and probably give them some Leopards later.
Let me tell you something. If they show up with Abrams, this war is not going to last very long for Russia.
So here's the thing. I want to ask you about this. I'm not doubting that we can militarily, with our technology, help Ukraine eventually over.
We could eviscerate Russia, and Russia would never be able to prove it. That's my point.
Like the North Stream pipeline blowing up on its own.
That's my point. Anyway, that's exactly my point.
What I'm trying to say is this, though. Yes, we can supply Ukraine with all technology. At what point do we have to worry about nuclear war?
I mean, if they can't prove it, it's up to them. Like, here's the thing.
Well, when nukes start flying, it really doesn't matter about proving things anymore.
So here's the problem. We can question whether or not we go to nuclear war has to do with one thing: the rationality of Vladimir Putin. We can agree to that. There's no other way we go to nuclear war.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So here's the thing. There's a couple of things I believe, and this one's very controversial, and I can't prove this. This is just something I guess. In the 1990s, the U.S. nuclear arsenal all of a sudden was in decay. Do you remember this? Like we had to replenish our arsenal. Some bad things were happening. It was becoming okay. If you understand how expensive it is to maintain fissile material and to keep hydrogen at negative 270 degrees Fahrenheit, it is incredibly expensive. For a country with a GDP less than $2 trillion, apparently they have all these working ICBMs. Personally, I don't think they have any working ICBMs.
Really?
I think their army is a fucking farce. I think they're massively undertrained. I think I think Russia is such a paper tiger. We don't even recognize how bad it is until they get.
I agree with you with their conventional military. It's complete crap. But just the nuclear stuff I'm worried about.
But the problem with the nuclear stuff is it's not like you just throw it in the freezer and it's fine. You have to maintain that shit.
But you don't think they have some that still work at least?
They would have to put all of their resources into keeping 2 ICBMs, maybe 10 at the most. Keep them running. Let me ask you something. How many ICBMs does Mexico have? If I were to ask you that question, how many ICBMs does Mexico have? You would laugh at me. But they have the same GDP as Russia. And I just don't understand how people think that Russia is just able to maintain this level. You would have to spend so much money to keep these things afloat. I'm talking hundreds of billions of dollars. And you're just telling me they had 7,000 ICBMs at one point. I just don't think that they're able to maintain this. When you look at how shitty their army was for a while, I'm just sorry. I just have an issue with it. Now, do they have 1 or 2? Maybe I might see that. But here's the main thing. The point you made up of the Nord Stream pipeline. If there's deniability, what I'm saying is the Russia tries to invade Ukraine. They get to Kiev. They almost get to Kiev. And then all of a sudden, their entire front, all of their tanks are just eviscerated one night. And the Ukrainian army's like, we did it. And they're like, no, those were F-35s. And we're like, do you have a picture? Can you prove it? That's my point. What I'm saying is
I see what you're saying.
My point is Germany, Finland, Denmark, France.
My concern is not about us pushing them out of Kyiv. My concern is pushing them out because listen, Russia sees it different. They see Kyiv and Crimea differently.
Yeah,
they tried to take Kyiv. They couldn't. They just backed out. Didn't even matter.
Well, those take the other half of the country.
My concern is
how does a country 4 times bigger than the other one not be able to take Kiev? How does this taking over a year? I'll tell you why. Because they're not good. They don't know how to prosecute a war.
Listen, no one's doubting Russian conventional military is garbage.
Yeah.
The concern is at what point are they willing to use escalation for nuclear weapons? I don't think they would do it for Kyiv. Worse, I mean, you've been hearing the reports.
Yeah.
There are some Ukrainian militias that are attacking within Russia.
Yeah.
Now, if this war, we give them the tanks, this goes even further. Zelensky is like, you know what, we're going to cross into Russia.
Yeah.
I want to prosecute Putin in a war crime. We have to take Moscow.
So here's the problem. As soon as that happens, they lose all funding from NATO. They lose all funding from the United States.
How sure are you of that?
But I don't think that the United States would back a conventional war by Ukrainians into Moscow. That would be.
I don't think so either.
That'd be super difficult.
I don't think so either. But I've been surprised so far. We've been telling them no jets, no tanks, no this, but every time we keep giving more and more stuff.
By the way, Napoleon tried it. And Hitler tried it, and it didn't work out well for them. Trying to invade up that same pass into Moscow has not worked out well.
Yeah, but they didn't have F-35s.
Okay, again, right. But
F-22 is even better. We have those.
Yeah,
also.
F-22s are better, but only one country has F-22s.
That's right.
Yeah. So now here's the thing. My point is this: in order to go to nuclear war, you need to believe that Vladimir Putin is so irrational that he would be willing to do that. And the problem is those oligarchs, remember, that are keeping him afloat, their families die too.
What about these rumors that he's sick and that he has the dead man switch and he doesn't even care? He just wants to go out.
It's funny. Tom Clancy. No, it wasn't Tom Clancy. It was Lee Child. Literally wrote a book about this, about a Russian president who had stage 4 pancreatic cancer and was willing to go to nuclear war in order to try to win the war back, or to defeat the Americans. The problem is with mutually assured destruction. There's a few things that are going on here. Now, there's a timer that Russia has. If the United States is able to develop anti-ICBM technology, which we may already have, trust me, the day we get it, you're never going to know about it. These are things like lasers.
I'm just curious. Why would we not tell them, though, just to deter them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a good point, but we didn't tell them about. I
can see both sides of why. I'm just curious.
I mean, it's a good point. Maybe we would. I don't know. I don't think we should. I think it should be one of these things where because once they fire the ICBMs and we can show that they did it and they put the world at peril and we shoot them down.
We have the whole public opinion against them.
That's the thing. It's almost like entrapment with the police.
Yes.
Now, the thing is, telling them that we don't have the ability to do it, or telling the Russians that we have the ability to shoot down ICBMs. If I were the Russians, are you going to launch it? You're still going to launch. You have to. You don't have a choice.
If you're losing everything.
You still have to launch, right?
Obviously.
So that's the issue that I have. But going back to what I'm saying, like the Russia and the United States don't fight each other. There's always a battleground. At one point, the battleground was Korea. At one point, the battleground was Vietnam. At one point, the battleground was Afghanistan, and now the battleground is Ukraine.
Well, here's the difference, though, and also other situations are all by proxy.
Yeah,
this is the different. Russia is directly fighting with its military against their neighboring country.
In Afghanistan, they fought specifically. Yeah, so it's not that different. But we did help the Mujahideen defeat the Russians, and I feel like feel like we're so much more technologically advanced than that point, and so are the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians have a better military than the Afghans did in '83.
No, of course.
And the United States is more militarily stronger than they were in 1983.
I guess the issue.
Hey y'all, Sergio here. I just want to mention I've created a completely free guide that shows you exactly how I went from having low confidence and being painfully awkward around women to easily meeting and dating numerous high quality desirable women in real life without the use of any dating apps or social media. So if you're struggling to get out there, if you have approach anxiety or don't know what to say or how to interact with women to make them want you and are sick of using dating apps with low value girls that hundreds of other guys have been chatting with, click the link in the description below to grab your free guide right now. And if you want private mentorship with me personally to help guide you every step of the way in this process, check out my mentorship program in the description too. I would be happy to help you reach your dating goals and overcome any obstacle you may face. And trust me, if I can do it, you can do it too. I hope to see you soon. Peace out.